Oh no. We got to restart. How long has that been like that? The beginning? Oh no. Okay. All right. Well, if you haven't heard the last 15 minutes, oh dear. Okay. That's we're just gonna keep on going. Is it working now? Okay, good deal. Been doing Zoom for a little while here now, and I forgot to unmute. So here we go. So when we can start from here anyway, I suppose. The Community Reinvestment Plan. I'm gonna replay a video maybe that we just did. That'd be a good idea. Sorry, guys, I'm thinking on the fly here. Because they didn't hear it. Okay, well, we'll figure it out. So, when we talk about how do you move equity into government process, a lot of what you need to do is listen to community members who have been harmed by your work and center in that, because otherwise you're just going to keep enacting the processes, the white supremacist ways of doing and thinking that are in your institution. And so if you put the voices of the people that you're trying to invest in first, you're going to internalize those values and internalize it into your processes. And I'll talk to you about how to do that in a way that allows your community leaders to do that with you in partnership. And so what I would ask of you as an audience member, as you're going through this, hopefully you get a bingo sheet, we attach that as a PDF, is to define risk in a project and success. And since we don't have audience members right now, I'll just give you a couple seconds to think about that. And as a government employee, oftentimes what I hear about in terms of risk and success is fiscal. It's, are we done on time? Are we satisfying our directors? All of these really important, concept of risks and success. But I'm going to challenge us to think of risk and success from another perspective as well. And so when we talk about investigating values, we want to start with the people you're serving. What do folks trust? What do they value? We're going to talk about your own personal powers and values, and we're going to go into, might not have the time, but keep in mind that your own values really should be in tune with your collaborators internally as well. So if you're building an internal governance system for your project, which I think everyone should, it shouldn't be the traditional hierarchy that we have, you and your supervisor. Other people need to touch this work. Are you relying on subject matter experts from other agencies, from within your own agency that can help your project? And what values do they hold? So as we go through, you'll see in the top right corner, just keep in mind those different areas of government, community, legislature, and the self as we investigate values. I'm going to have Corbett talk about some of the great work that the Harriet Tubman Foundation for Safe Passage did as part of this project to work with our folks of lived experience in the community.
Thank you. And I think these voices will really speak for themselves in terms of, but I think it's important to know that through the research process done through the foundation, we interviewed people one-on-one, had weekly lunch and learns, focus group conversations, stakeholder group presentations, emails, video, audio collection to come up with the most robust kind of set of information and data that we could use to help inform the plan. And so this is a little clip of some of the things that we heard to just share and consider.
How have you been impacted by the war on drugs?
it's interesting because the title War on Drugs is not a today's age language. It's been around for a while. I'm showing my age. So the war on drugs for me basically means crack. That was the drug at that time that was causing mayhem in the community I grew up in. And I was a child, obviously, and I saw the community really get destroyed very easily, very quickly, night and day. People that I once looked up to, people that I felt safe around, people that I would come across in my neighborhood, and I was a child again.
Personally, prior to COVID being a pandemic, I think drugs was the first real pandemic.
Just to the fact that they were pulled out of our communities, they were not only traumatized by our systems, but they were pulled out of any professional development process that they could have enjoyed, right? So that's college, that's high school for some of us, right?
I think this question is a very loaded question, right? Because I think that you can be impacted directly and indirectly by the war on drugs.
Exactly.
You know, I was born in '96, and so I didn't live through the '80s, right? But my parents did, right? And so the impact that they had by the direct war on drugs, which we also have to look at as, it's not just a war that we see in our everyday lives, right? This is a war through policy. It started back in Nixon's administration, and then really was heightened in Clinton's administration when they started putting minimum sentencing laws and harsh.
And again, when we speak to reentry, we're constantly saying, how do we get, the resident is about to release, what's the best way to provide him with him or her wraparound services, right? How do we get them prepared for reentry? But very rarely do you hear, how do we get the family ready for their return home, right? Because
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's an extra mouth to feed. What if this person's been institutionalized? How are we going to help them navigate, or even help the family navigate that? Look, this has been his norm for the past 5 years.
Generational curses, right? And that people are only set to be criminals or drug addicts, right? But no, we've just been targeted. So it has been a mental warfare as much as it's been a physical warfare in front of us. I can say that these impacts, and I think that professors like Dr. Joy DeGruy, the author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, would agree that these impacts don't just end when the policies and when the people get locked up, but they actually have lasting effects on communities, and that push, because these pillars were removed for our communities. It forced our people to be on assistance. It forced our people to even need resources. And then that produced imagery like welfare queens, when really we were forced and pushed into these terrible and dark sectors. These drugs were pumped into our communities. It's not, when you think about, is this an individual or an environmental thing? It's definitely an environmental thing. Our communities were strong and healthy.
Yeah, and in case you can't hear that last bit, just emphasizing that she said our communities were strong and healthy. I just really think that's critical as we think about rebuilding and investing. So I really want you as much as possible to sit with those values, maybe play it again if you need some more time, and asking the question again, how about risk and success? How do you think this community would define that? There was a pivotal moment where we were looking at which consultant firms to hire. And one of the things that stood out to me the most of the Harriet Tubman Foundation for Safe Passage was in the application defining risk as something was about community members, that this money, if we don't do it right, community members will suffer that we could have helped, right? That's how we define risk. We define risk within success in community. And so there's a couple of values here that you'll have on the slides attached that were pulled out from research that I wanted to highlight. And with time, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to have Miss Jessie just take a moment because the Harriet Tubman Foundation for Safe Passage was our main contractor and really brought this project to life as a new small firm led by those with lived experience in this work and themselves a by and for organization. So we start with who we contract with in order to reach other by and for organization leadership. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think in the Harriet Tubman Foundation for Safe Passage, what values did you bring that brought success to this project?
Number one, I think you topped on it, caring about community members. Definitely in seeing the bid, well, the contract when it came out for the proposal when it was coming out, we saw, wow, this is an important task. Who can do this work? And I knew who could do this work. I knew people who were doing this just because they love the community here in Washington State. And though in our work we hear a lot of we hear a lot about subcontracting and such, and some people were scared or didn't believe that it would happen. And for me, I feel like one of the values is taking that step and opening doors. And so we applied, even though it was 2 to 3 weeks. I put the best people together, and the people I put together had and have passion for the community that they're in and are actively working. And for the fact that we were able to work with the support of the state of Washington and able to support those working for the state of Washington, it was a different thing. We had values of caring for community and those who lived in it.
And I think you touched on this for just a moment. I want to pull that out for folks who are listening about the decision of how you sculpt your RFP is so critical, or whatever process you're using. There was conversation about, should we split this contract into two of, the firm that will do the research and then the firm that will go connect with community, as if you can really separate the two. And so I think taking this step of Commerce, taking this step to say, we're going to hire one firm who's going to accomplish it all because they're going to be good at it all. It was definitely a risk because it was a very tight timeline, a very tight timeline. But this is what happens when you trust in people who have values and who are rooted in community. The skills are out there. The research firms, Sean Glaze leading this work and research, just absolutely critical. And so one of the last questions I want to ask you is a bit on that. You're a new contractor yourself. This is Dr. Jessie Miller, everybody, since I was muted at the beginning and you couldn't hear a dang thing. So this, how do we bring contractors like yourself who are by and for organization leaders? You've got some lived experience in this work. How do we bring you more like yourself to the state level to be these big contractors that we need?
Yeah, someone had to break that, be the first one out there. And with that, even taking the steps to hire the foundation was supposedly risk, but I'm telling you, a good choice you did. but with that, now other people in community, especially, people who are on our team know a lot of people and people know us. It let people understand that I can do it too. And where we have powerful relationships across the community, and for us to not listen to whatever the naysayers are and apply and get the position, now other people of color are applying and understanding that it's possible. People are getting hired for positions on the inside. So how do we bring more contractors? Do kind of what we're still doing, is that reach. You can't play the game like you have been playing. It hasn't been moving the button forward, and so it is taking steps out of what has been and what has become the norm to look at different ways of doing your work. And I think we talked about that this morning, and people said doing, bending. I think they were talking about how far can you bend. Bend till you break, baby. Make it so that I'm still, let's just be honest, I'm still dealing with being a contractor with the state of Washington. And I explained it felt like I'm back at the school and I want to do good for the teachers and the principals, so I get a good grade. But I am an expert in my field. I am an expert in community organizing, but there is some leeways. But as there are more organizations of power, of color, that's where we strengthen. And that's what the Harriet Tubman Foundation for Safe Passage is we're gonna go and we're gonna, lead the way, get this path, but it's for safe passage so that you guys can come behind us. We want you to come behind us. It's lonely on the other side. And so I keep coming back here because I can get you. And so we can come on the other side. And I can't always take the trip. So I need other people to come take the trip. And that is kind of how do we bring contractors with lived experience. I want to say, come back to that one. You are doing what's right. The state is doing what's right. The way I got here is from being able to come to board meetings. I didn't even know what a board meeting was before, but I was paid for my time. I was paid for my time. So I was able to, and at that time it was, extra income so I could do what I love, but it didn't take away from anything on my table. So for our state to have acknowledged this, and it is how 25 years later, I'm still an activist, is because when I wasn't able to afford to be here, because I had work to do, they gave me stipends. I didn't know what a stipend was. I didn't know I could reimburse, and it wasn't even reimbursable. They were paying for my travel, paying for me to show up, paying to hear my voice and what I had to say, and they listened. It's been 25 years. And so where we're seeing where we're at right now is it's on the time, but that's how you get leaders like me. You really understanding that not everybody, you got to think about, people are going to work every day and they're not between 9 to 5, they're not available. But if I could take, an hour, 2 hours and lead the work that I might not really like to go help my community grow strong, I'm going to get paid more than I was making. I'm going to go talk. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's how we are taking steps in Washington State, and so I'm proud to have been part of it, to continue to be a part of it, and it is totally possible, and we're making it happen here in Washington. So I'm very proud.
Yeah, and you touched on a quick moment. I don't want to lose this because you never know what happens in a conversation with the people in the room, right? Is when you were saying about feeling like you're in school again, that was a really difficult time. That was a difficult part of our work. And I don't want to lose sight of that because I've seen it happen personally in my own experience and other experiences. Folks who were harmed by the system, you've been harmed by the systems. We have all been harmed one way or another, and some just a heck of a lot more. And when you go into the same work that you've been harmed by, that is really rough. It is just difficult. It is personal. And having your agency be ready. So if your agency is hiring people with lived experience, push back and say, but are you ready to take care of these people when they come in the door, to understand that some things are going to be triggering, they're going to be emotional, they're going to be challenging, and they're not going to say the right thing all the time. They're not always going to know exactly when to navigate the system and how to play the politics of being a state worker. That is a skill you learn. And it has to do with code switching and all of these things. It's a learned skill, because if you don't come from that community of folks, it's difficult. And so I really want to make sure we don't lose that as a lesson learned in this work, is how do we support new contractors as they come in the door? And so I just want to say thank you for taking that risk with Commerce, because part of what we need to do is be grateful every time someone who has been harmed by the state is willing to come work with us again. That's big, right? And so thank you for coming to work with us and for bringing such a beautiful project to fruition. Is amazing. So thank you. Yep. Absolutely. I'm going to go through a few more slides. I don't know if you want to sit here and look cute. We feel okay. Perfect. Okay. So I just want to emphasize for my folks out there, if you're trying to get access to the values of your community, we had some great recordings. Sometimes it's difficult to build those bridges or the relationships, and you're like, gosh, I just don't have any connections. Contract out to community members that are already doing the work. And you can see that in blue on our focus groups here. But I also want to emphasize part of the research team came forth and said, you know, hey, we're going to do our focus groups. We're going to do all this stuff. But P.S., we have been saying the same thing for decades. What about all these other reports that are talking about the same thing? Do not be afraid to make connections to other work that the state has done, because that will really reinforce and let you hear the voice, the values of the voices of these people who are trying to advocate for what they need. So I'm just going to focus on those two and make sure you hear the voices that are not just live and in the moment. 4 minutes, cool. So I'm gonna say just in these last couple minutes that yourself, some questions you can ask yourself. There's a lot of work on allyship, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but when you think about the powers in your community that your folks with lived experience have, they have so many skills and power. In order to recognize theirs and hear them and bring them to the table, you need to also know yourself and know your powers to make space in different ways. And there are ways to do that, but I really just want you to think about and sit with how you use your own powers in every project that you have. And then I'm going to highlight I'm going to jump this section. There is one part I just want to say is that if we believe that those with lived experience are the most capable of designing their own solutions, then they should be viewed as subject matter experts. And this is what I mean by that. And if you leave here with nothing else, please leave with that. Tattoo it on your arm, you know, nail it on your eyeball, whatever you need to do. Because if you bring folks in the room, folks like Jesse 25 years ago paid to do this work of advising on a project, and you say you have been harmed by this work, you know, several state agencies that had to do with that you've had to deal with and negotiate your own social work with your social worker, they are subject matter experts in this problem, and they are part of the solution because they know it back, front, right, and left. And when you bring folks in the room, you can't all of a sudden say, oh, but you don't know about this one part. Like, I'm the state worker. I know more about finance. I know more about commerce. I know more about these things. You have to listen to folks as the experts that they are, because they have been navigating this same problem for decades, probably of their life. When we're talking about the war on drugs intergenerationally, they are complex. And so if you bring folks in the room, be ready that they're going to tell you some truth that you might need to internalize, and to not infantilize that part of the process. And so when we did, just focusing on that element, when we did co-creation, a lot of what we did is, let's see, jump to the very end bit where we had 18 recommended programs by the end of our work. And then in each of our programs, we had about 4 meetings or so where we sat down with the program managers that would be enacting this work in the state, side by side with folks who are on the advisory board with lived experience or just part of the project, but making sure that in every room we reiterated the values we created at the beginning or in January, February, and we reiterated those values. We listened to the folks who are expert in this problem as part of the solution in every room. If there's ever a room where you're asking, who do we invite? Who do we invite to this meeting? Oh, I know I need a person in this office. Check yourself and see, is there a time when you can invite that next person? Because I guarantee you they're going to bring something to the conversation. I'm going to kind of wrap it up and say that when you try to check your values, one great way to see if you are enacting the values of the people that you're serving, check language. In our report, we need to see exactly what people are saying, not just in quotes, but in in spirit, in the voice, in the movement of what is critical to the values of this community. And I really hope when in the publishing of the report, the folks who are a part of this research can see their lives in the work. And if they can't, that's a problem, right? And the second thing, as part of our mandate and checking that you're meeting your mandate, we're lucky that part of our mandate was to work with by and for organizations. And the way that I know that they are not just working with us, but they're owning it, is they are calling us like executive sponsors, and they're saying, where's the report? What time is it in? Is this in the report? What I want to see how this edit went through. They are owning your process. And because they are the public, that is their role. That is exactly where they should be. They should be owning the data that they put in. And so if you're wondering how to check, am I involving folks enough? Do they feel a sense of ownership? You can do a survey, but you can also check, how are they involving themselves in the process past the meeting, past the time when you allow them in the room. And I want to make sure that kind of touched on these things, but I am so excited to introduce Christy and Sharina, who are going to be enacting this over the next couple of years. So you go on ahead. I want to give you two just a little FaceTime. So just come on over and I'll hand the mic over and just want to have you introduce yourself to the community.
Hello, I'm Sharina James, and I'm honored to be a part of this project.
And I'm Christy Devers, also honored to be a part of the project.
And so we just wanted to share some of our agreed upon values. We want to act with honesty, openness, and integrity during this project, and we're committed to actively listening and co-creating with community.
We work to earn trust in relationships, and we recognize and seek to redress the racial, economic, and social impact of the war on drugs nationally and, most importantly, locally.
That said, we invite you to reach out to us. Our contact information and website hopefully can be accessed by a QR code that is in the slides. We look forward to being in the community with you.
I think we'll wrap it up with that wonderful statement. I was told that there weren't any questions in the chat so far. I will also put into the chat my email, but this is really how you reach us now. If you have questions about the project, it's for Christy and Sharina. If you have any questions about the research, that'll be out with the report, and you can always email me. I'm happy to always sit down and meet some folks, talk through anything. My calendar is available to you. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. And I hope you were able to get something out of this presentation for your own work here at the state of Washington. Thank you.